Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So I've been seeing a lot of debate and discussion about park affiliations versus the neighborhood, which one should be in NBA 2K20. I've seen a lot of pros for the park affiliations. That sort of seem to be the way that the community is leaning towards, mostly towards park affiliations over the neighborhood. And when I was thinking about it, I sort of thought, why can't, the best of both worlds be implemented? So I sort of thought of something that I think could work. I don't know what they're going to do. I'm sure it's not this, but, something like this I think could work, sort of to bring park affiliations and the neighborhood together. Because there's certainly pros and cons of both. I think some of the slander thrown at the neighborhood is sort of a recency bias thing. Park affiliations have been out of 2K for a couple years now. And I think there's sort of some dissatisfaction with the neighborhood. Not necessarily, I think, with the neighborhood itself, but sort of the potential of the neighborhood. I think a lot of people, and even me included, think that the neighborhood, especially this year in 2K19 after its inaugural season in 2K18, sort of thought it could have been fleshed out a little more. I think that some of the neighborhood, some of the cons of the people not wanting the neighborhood over park affiliations is just because the potential of the neighborhood, it seems, hasn't been reached. And park affiliations were obviously beloved a few 2Ks ago when they were implemented. So sort of my idea would be, with the neighborhood, and what I've heard from 2K20 is sort of they're looking to have a more authentic feel for the game of basketball. And the neighborhood doesn't necessarily bring that to life. I mean, you have courts sort of within a central environment surrounded by like stores, and you have like your my court and little apartment high rise in there too. So, it doesn't really seem like an authentic basketball feel. But if you look at the cover of 2K20 with Anthony Davis on it, and you look at the background, you see the train in the background kind of going over. And then you see also, sort of what you'd think of as, your sort of every town, every city basketball court. The hoop isn't perfect, the rims aren't perfect, the netting isn't perfect. Some of the concrete, the painting of the lines aren't perfect. And that's what you expect. Some of the courts out in the neighborhood, they seem like, almost, too perfect for, sort of like an inner city basketball, Rucker Park, or just your every town, every city environment. And I think that was part of the problem. The cages were probably the best feel of, just, sort of grabbing guys 3-on-3, 5-on-5, in a city and, hooping in, local park or whatever. But that wasn't real basketball. That was with the trampolines and all that. So what I was thinking is you take the concept of the neighborhood, all the stores and all that, that surrounded the courts, and you make that almost like a central hub. So you might start either in that hub or in whatever park affiliation that you are in. If you start in your park affiliation, you can go to that hub to visit the stores and stuff, almost like a downtown area that's sort of removed from, the streets that you would normally see pickup basketball games being played on. Parks and stuff, within, kind of close-knit neighborhoods and stuff. Just sort of that feel seems to be removed from the neighborhood, even though it's a cool open-world concept. I think it can still be there, but just be removed, in a sense, from where the parks are, the park affiliations. And then the park affiliations would be, you'd go to the park, it would only be courts. It would just be courts, 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s. All separated, and you'd just be able to play as many courts as possible, so guys wouldn't be waiting in line too long. You could still implement the VIP status. If you have a 95 plus overall or whatever, you can, sort of jump the line or whatever you want to call it. You can have, squads, sort of cruise courts only. You can still implement that kind of stuff. But again, the parks would just have courts. And then there would sort of be a second layer, what I would almost call the new neighborhood. It would be, again, imagine the parks, there'd be different parks too. It wouldn't all be the same setting. So you'd have parks, like inner city parks, maybe like Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, places like that it would try to replicate. And then you saw with the Dwayne Wade cover, you saw the Miami Beach. You might have parks in more of a beach setting. We've seen that in the past. I think that should be something that they look to bring back. Sort of different cultures, different areas of, the United States or even the world to represent in these parks. It shouldn't be the same. So have more of that inner city style, have more of that beach style, and then, whatever the third one would be, you could take, a part of the world, part of the country, and work something with there. If they were to do 3 parks, they could also expand it, have 5 parks, 6 parks, whatever it would be, just to get a represent a part of basketball culture, because basketball is so global now and very expansive that, it's all over the world. I think it shouldn't just be looking at the United States. You can look to expand globally, look at different areas of the world, how different courts are, how different basketball cultures look to implement a park that is representative of that area. I think that'd be very cool. So that would be the park. And then the neighborhood would be, again, representative of that area. And you would see more of the dodgeball, the red ball, blue ball, sort of. There's the football. Maybe they add some other stuff. That would be in that neighborhood again. If it was Miami Beach, maybe, there was, again, that beach culture, sort of that beach vibe would be implemented, sort of in that neighborhood, as I would call it, that sort of surrounds the park. But in the park itself, it's just courts and it's expansive. It's not like this year where it was really kind of 50-50 park neighborhood. I'd really make it like 85-15 park to neighborhood in this sense. I want a lot of courts, and the neighborhood would be outside of that area, and that's where you would play some of those other games like dodgeball. If they want to implement some other stuff, maybe like the tattoo parlor, or you get your hair cut, maybe that's in that area. Sort of just to represent, again, there's different segments of basketball culture in the world, and I think it'd be really cool to represent that within the different park affiliations. And again, what was called the neighborhood this year would be sort of a centralized hub for everyone. It wouldn't be specific to each park, but that would be where you'd see more of maybe where you live, your My Court, the NBA store, different things like that, the ante-up area, where you can bet VC on some of the games. Some of that stuff would be in that sort of central hub area, and then you'd have your park affiliations, and then you'd have again, I'd call it the neighborhood, but, sort of that back area where you might play some of those other non-basketball related games, and maybe you have, again, like tattoo parlor, haircut place in those areas, sort of within the streets of the neighborhood. Just sort of get that basketball, not just like the basketball with the parks, but then that basketball culture feel. So then I think that would be, an interesting thing. Again, I don't know what they're doing, but I was sort of just thinking of, all the discussion I've seen between the park affiliations and the neighborhood. That's kind of what I was, sort of thinking, to sort of combine the best of both worlds. Again, with the neighborhood, it's really more of what you can do outside of the basketball courts. And the park is really the courts. So why not just separate it? Give, the parks just be courts and have there be a lot of courts. Well, again, 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s. Maybe there's even like a 3-point shooting area, dunk contest area, game of 21, whatever you want. Again, because in the neighborhood, I see a lot of, standing in line, waiting to get games, because there's just not that many courts. So get as many courts as possible. Make it unique, each park unique, sort of a segment of basketball culture, expansive and representative of the entire world. I think would be really, really cool and unique. So that's sort of just my thoughts. If you guys want to comment what you think of this idea, or if you have any other ideas, please feel free to. I'd love to see what you guys think. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.